Hello everyone, thank you all for joining me today for another video on the Simply Car Things YouTube channel. Today we are going to be getting straight into the BMW N52 once again. More specifically, we're going to be talking about 5 common issues that the BMW N52 encounters throughout the duration of this engine's life. Now, the BMW N52, as we all know, is a very stout engine. It is very reliable, very well built, and to be quite honest, it really doesn't have a whole lot of issues, nothing detrimental that this engine commonly faces. And to be honest, it's a very stout power plant, and it is why it was implemented into so many different models and so many variations of BMWs over the past decade or so. Now today I'm currently driving Project E90, which is our BMW 328i that we recently bought for super cheap. It's more of a restoration project than anything. We're not going to be modding this one, and it's going to be going up for sale pretty soon here. But if you haven't seen some of the build series or some of the restoration process that we completed on that car, make sure to do so and to check out those videos, because you'll find a lot of good content. And if you could leave a thumbs up on this video, as well as subscribe to my channel down below if you have not done so already, I would appreciate that immensely. I would also like to mention that some of the information that I'm going to be discussing in this video I received from an article off of bmwtuning.co, and I will leave a link to their article in the description box down below because it is very helpful, and I learned a fair amount of information as well about the N52 platform, and they definitely deserve the credit in terms of providing some of this very valuable insight into this motor. Now, with all that being said, let's get into the first issue that the BMW N52 commonly faces. That is going to come in the form of lifter tick, and basically what this is the hydraulic valve adjusters inside the N52 inline 6. What happens is over time, and this is particularly common anywhere between the 60 to 100k mile mark, that you will experience this. And again, some cars experience this, some cars don't. This E90 that I'm currently in thankfully doesn't have the issue. Now what happens is, due to poor design of the hydraulic valve adjusters themselves, there is a lack of oil flow that goes to them, and as a result of that and that lack of lubrication, there is an evident rattle or ticking sound that may come from the engine, and sometimes it can be pretty loud, it can be pretty apparent and pretty annoying. Now, what does this mean for your car? Is it damaging? Is it going to cause any other problems down the road? No. For the most part, the lifter tick itself is nothing to be alarmed by. It is really normal to come by with these cars, and again, it's not going to be detrimental to the mechanical performance of the engine itself. It's not going to cause any sort of detrimental like engine failure or agitate any other potential issues that the N52 may experience throughout the lifetime of the engine. However, the issue is quite annoying, and the lifter tick itself can be pretty dang loud. So it's definitely not something that you're going to want to encounter on a day-to-day basis, and this gets particularly evident through short drives, especially when the car is cold started. And if you're not somebody that's going to be doing a lot of long distance traveling, this issue may become more pronounced, and it may become particularly apparent in those types of driving situations. Now, is there a potential solution to this? Now, unfortunately, there aren't a whole lot of easy fixes to this problem, simply due to the fact that those hydraulic valve adjusters are integrated into the cylinder head, of course. So it's definitely not the most easy thing to access. Now, there is a temporary band-aid fix that you can do, which is known as bleeding those lifters. And basically what you do is, for about a half hour, you take your car onto the highway and drive it consistently at around 4,500 to 5,000 RPM to essentially bleed the lifters and temporarily eliminate the tick itself. Again, though, this is a band-aid fix, and the real permanent fix is to replace the valve adjusters as well as the cylinder head, which is definitely going to be a pretty expensive repair, and it's also very extensive. Fortunately, though, it's not anything detrimental to the car, and it's purely just a matter of annoying sound that comes from the engine. So even if your N52 does encounter the issue, it's not something to be particularly alarmed with. Getting into the second issue of our N52 common problems comes in the form of Vanos failure. Now, what can happen here, this is quite common amongst many different BMW engines. Vanos is BMW's version of variable valve timing. Now, what can happen, and this is usually around the 70,000 to 90,000 mile mark. Sometimes it can be higher, sometimes it can be less. It's tricky to pinpoint specifically the mileage that it can occur at. those solenoids themselves, due to a lack of oil flow that's controlling those cam gears, which ultimately adjust your valves, they can go bad. And what happens is you may notice that the car may throw some engine lights or certain codes, and this can come in the form of different camshaft and timing codes. You can also have power loss. You can also have reduced or poorer MPG, and just a number of other symptoms that may occur that would result or hint at the fact that the Vanos solenoids are starting to go bad on you. Now, there are two ways that you can approach this issue. One way is by cleaning out the Vanos solenoids by removing them. A lot of times people will use brake cleaner to get the oil and the gunk out of them. But again, that's more of just a band-aid fix, as stated previously. The ultimate solution is to replace those Vanos solenoids. Fortunately, they're not that expensive. It's highly recommended to go with some OEM units, specifically because a lot of aftermarket solutions, or ones that you may find on like eBay for cheaper, may run into more issues in the future. And it's definitely just one of those things to fix it properly while you're at it, and just go with the OEM solution. Replacing those Vanos solenoids will usually do the trick and eliminate many of those codes that you may be encountering, as well as fix many of those problems with potential power loss or reduced MPG and odd driving sensation. Now, the third problem you may face with the N52 is the water pump failure. Now, unfortunately, the N52, like many of the engines in this generation of BMWs, features an electronic water pump. And what can happen over time is, because of the fact that it's not mechanical, it's not belt driven, the motor itself is prone to potential failure, or the internals of the water pump itself may start to corrode. So the plastic impellers and some of those plastic internal components can begin failing, or sometimes certain electrical connections that lead to the power of the water pump itself may burn out for whatever reason, and this can lead to the entire water pump itself basically shutting down and prevent the supply of coolant to the engine of the car itself. Now, this can present many problems. Specifically, your car is going to go into limp mode in an effort to counteract those rising engine temperatures. You're also going to get an engine temperature light come up on the little screen in between the gauges of your car, and what can happen is your car will go into limp mode and there will be a complete loss of power. Most of the time you will be forced to shut the engine off, otherwise you can damage the motor if the car is not shut off in time. It's important to get it replaced, to purchase a brand new water pump, and while you're at it, go with a new thermostat as well, because you're going to have to access the thermostat housing as well throughout the process of the water pump replacement, so it's good just to knock out both while you're down there. With that, you should be good. For example, on my BMW 335i, the water pump did fail on that car. Yes, it's an N54 engine, but it used a very similar electrical water pump, and mine didn't go out until about the 125,000 mile mark. So while it is prone to happening, it doesn't happen with every car. It's usually in the higher mileage range of these N52s, and if you replace it along with a thermostat, you'll be good to go for a long time. Now, our fourth and fifth issues with the BMW N52 motor come in the form of, you may have guessed it, oil leaks. Usually, the valve cover gasket and the oil filter housing gasket are going to be the most common sources of oil leaks and potential failure on these engines. As many of you probably know, the valve cover gasket is a very common culprit of oil leaks in BMW engines, and this is primarily due to just the gasket material corroding and deteriorating over time. One thing that I've noticed in my personal experience is that cars that tend to sit out for long periods of time and aren't used tend to experience more frequent gasket corrosion, if that makes sense, than cars that are driven regularly. And a lot of times what happens is seals become more prone to leaking, such as from the valve cover gasket. And regardless, it's a fairly common issue that happens in the higher mileage ranges of these N52s. And you'll notice that you'll see oil building up around the valve cover in between where it seals with the main engine block itself. A lot of times you can even smell or see oil physically burning from the engine itself or from the hood area. Sometimes it can even come in through the cabin climate control vents from the HVAC system. And if you replace your spark plugs on your car, you may even see oil sort of built up and residue in the spark plug chamber itself. So a valve cover gasket usually is not going to really cause like any problems to the car itself, but you are going to be burning oil, you are going to be leaking oil over time. So it's one of those things that you want to take care of knock it out as a piece of maintenance. If you want to get it done preventatively, that works as well. The oil filter housing gasket is a common fault point as well, and with this design, with the N5X engines, they use relatively the same oil filter housing design, and the gaskets over time, again, for the same reasons as the valve cover, just corrosion over time, and just with general use and heat cycling, they tend to go bad, and you will see leaks developing around those areas. With the oil filter housing, it's easier to spot a leak because you'll normally see the residue literally just built up on the filter housing as well. Now, it's definitely one of those things that you'll want to get changed out sooner than later, because over time, if you don't address the oil filter housing leak, there is a potential for engine damage to occur for a number of reasons. But anyway, that is going to cover it for the 5 common issues that the BMW N52 faces. I sort of feel like a broken record making this video because I've made so many BMW engine common issue videos. A lot of these engines sort of experience the same type of issues overall. A lot of this stuff is very rinse and repeat, run-of-the-mill kind of maintenance and issues that you might run into. But again, the N52 is probably one of the most reliable BMW inline-6 engines that have ever been produced. And it's very easy to source parts from them. They're relatively easy to work on. And again, they're not going to let you down overall in your car. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. Again, if you could leave a thumbs up, I would really appreciate that, as well as subscribe to the channel down below. Thank you so much, guys, for watching my videos. Feel free to browse anything else on my channel. And with all that being said, I'll catch you all in the next one. Take it easy.